Welcome back to Gaming at the Round Table. This is episode 4 with JoJo, Maverick, and Crystal.
Welcome back. Last time we left off, we wanted to talk about a few things that we didn't really have time to get into. And one of those topics was speaking about the terrible memory that I have. that was the topic.
The release schedule of content, I think, is the best leading line for that one.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks for the prompt. So, right now, we're tentatively looking to have a release schedule where we go podcast on Thursdays. Eventually, we'd like that to be kind of like a live stream podcast. But for right now, we're doing pre-recording as we get settled in. So podcast every Thursday, and then we're attempting to have a YouTube video of some kind. Generally, it's going to be a game review every Friday. And then that gives us time throughout the week to get the content together, do our dives, do the game development, that kind of thing. Currently, we're also doing a what we're calling dives, so it's kind of like a 1 to 2 week cycle where we alternate our focus. So one focus we have is polishing our skill sets, and so we're taking courses. We're even when we're not taking courses, for example, I've looked into a lot of technology for our website that I was already fairly familiar with, but not at the level in which I was comfortable publishing out to the internet where people can hack us and otherwise do nasty things to us. So I spent a lot of time working with something I already knew, but kind of fine tuning and honing that skill set so that it's more production ready. And Joe and Crystal, you guys have been doing things with your time as well, in and outside of the dives into the games. So if you could, let's talk about that for a minute.
I'll go first. Well, my initial dive and kind of jump into the pool, as they say, has been more marketing related and figuring out the realm of social media and how to use it to market. Because a lot of the times, most of us use social media for just that, for just social time killing, sitting around, just what are our friends up to, where are they at, that type of thing. So trying to learn how to use it towards marketing kind of changes your perspective on it, and learning more on the timing of things. Because I dabbled in a little bit because I did photography on my own, and that's kind of a business in and of itself. But I've never been the type to be like, as I say, like a salesman. So learning how to set up your social media to be your face, it's a new thing because it's not a person doing it. So for me, it was learning how to get it to work properly and finding out, does this work? Does that work? And that's where the scheduling aspect of it became a recurring theme, because most people, again, when they put something on social media, they don't put any thought into it. They see something that they like. Oh, my dog did something cute. Let me take a picture. My kid did something. My kid walked for the first time. And I think that's a whole new realm in and of itself, just mentioning that, because growing up, most people, when they took a picture or took a recording, it wasn't for everybody to consume it. It was, you had it, you maybe showed it to your immediate family and a couple other people.
We're doing a really good job at reminding the audience of our age.
Yeah.
uh,
I'm the oldest of the bunch, so I have some leeway, but by a year. So it's not like I'm drastically older. Well, compared to my brother, I would say. But again, going back to what I was saying, is that trying to learn to take what you normally do without thought and building it into something that can build your presence, as they say. So again, it's just trying to say marketing and then social media in the same like bubble. It's a weird change of things because again, you have to make the conscious thought of, is this going to work in my benefit, or is this just going to be, hey, I'm just putting it up for fun? And then trying to figure out which of the many avenues, because I mean, there's so many different social medias. It's trying to figure out what fits your business or fits your ideas best. Because again, I did art for fun, so putting my art on certain things, it didn't do anything, and it kind of made me feel like, why does nobody like what I do? And it was just that I was putting it in the wrong place. Once I found the right place to put it in, it grew exponentially. So that's been kind of my dip into what this means to go, okay, I'm using social media as a whole for marketing.
Right. A significant transition. Even the difference between your personal brand and the fact that we're representing multiple people now. And and so it's not just, well, this would work, right? It's that duality. You mentioned that there's a line between professional and personal, but then there's that additional line of professional, personal, and then there's a thin barrier between professional for your own arena and professional for what could grow, right? Because the long term here is we're doing all this stuff every week, talk about scheduling. Like, why are we doing this? We're doing it to become a larger entity over time. What about you, Crystal?
I've been doing UI UX and Figma based courses. Um, Mostly, though, I've been working with Figma and learning how to basically design some things for the social medias that we currently have. So even though I haven't dived as far into the course as I would like, I have played with Figma quite a bit recently because I had to create, like I said, the banners. I had to create a profile picture. I had to get with you guys and get like a color theme that we wanted to go on. Like these are all things that I had to learn about, but I didn't learn specifically from the course. Now, I'm sure the course is going to dive into these things because it's UI UX. It's what I'm supposed to be learning. However, I'm lucky in that I got to sit down with my brother and have a discussion because he does a lot of marketing and UI UX and Figma stuff. So I talked to him about, oh, well, what do you do to set up your clients' websites? And he kind of gave me a run through. And then I've been working on that for, I would say, like what, the last week and a half?
Yeah.
Since I wasn't sick.
Yeah, and that actually touches on the notion of having to juggle between this runway that we've set up for ourselves. Like here's what we want to do: podcast Thursdays, YouTube video reviews Friday. We want to spend the 3 business days before Thursday on honing our skills, but we're also using that exact same time to generate this content. So it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back, right? So we've got this schedule in place, but the time we're supposed to spend learning and honing is kind of like on the job training as well. So,
Well,
yeah.
at least for now. I feel like in the future, a lot of these things will be a lot more like the time that you need to learn something, right? To do a course. You can actually focus your time on doing that course rather than right now we don't have everything established yet. So we're trying to learn as quickly as possible, get those things developed and push them out so that way we could focus on, learning and whatnot. But in time we'll get there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
I think that ties back to what I was saying as far as learning the social medias and things like that. It's allowing us to establish our schedules based on how the social medias work. Whereas, like for example, TikTok, it's one of those things that they say that the algorithm works daily.
Yeah.
So if you're not consistently enough with it, it kind of drops off. So it's trying to figure out like how can we produce something in our scheduled time that fills in that gap. And then again, learning what we're learning, how to make it better so that way our content not only gets up but starts to improve as we get into it.
Right. And I would even go a little bit further. So my schedule's been pretty erratic by comparison. Uh, the why is less important than the notion that I think what we're trying to do right now is this 50-50 between establish ourselves and establish this routine, but every time we get one piece of the puzzle relatively in place, we're basically immediately talking about, okay, what's the next piece of the puzzle? Because we're not at our full vision right now. So, for example, we want to include more scheduled content on the game development. We want to include more scheduled streaming service type content, right? And we had to kind of start with the baby step. First, it was let's get a podcast out. Okay, we got one podcast out. We've got two podcasts out. Then we had the YouTube video out. And we struggled a little bit with both of those. And now we're going, okay, we're basically on schedule now, sans being sick. We're getting that rhythm is in place. We're looking good for the next several of both. Now let's start transitioning into the game development, into potentially the streaming development. How do we want to do those? And so I think there's a lot of discussion, but also just feeling out. And that's kind of our process, right? Like we do have this set image of our schedule that this is what we're going to be doing every week in half a year from now, but we seem to be stacking it on little by little, like building block method, and I think it's working. Like if I hadn't been sick for a little while there, I think we would actually be ahead of schedule.
I think we figured things out pretty quick in comparison.
Crystal had a doubt face, a side eye right there.
I think we would be on schedule. Okay, on schedule.
I see. Sorry.
I mean, I think we're figuring things out quicker than not. I wouldn't say we're better than other people in any way, but I think we've kind of picked things up quicker. And I think part of what we've had prior to coming into this has been helping fill in gaps compared to just starting from absolute zero.
Yeah.
Because again, I know there's people that do start from, hey, I got an idea, let's try it. And then it's just spitballing for the first like 10 of whatever they're doing. And I think we've kind of been able to learn and say, hey, this is probably what we should do. Or we did enough research before we like got up and started to run, which I think has saved us a lot on the back end of it.
I think another thing, we talk about schedule, and we've kind of taken the vantage point of schedule for the consumer, but a lot of what you're talking about, I think, is due to the schedule we impose outside of the things that we're releasing, right? We have multiple meetings, we have multiple meetings each week at scheduled times on scheduled days. And we treat it very much like a business transaction that we would anywhere else, right? So we know what time our meeting is, when the next one is, and relatively how long it's going to be. And so I think having that self-imposed professionalism and consistency is what's helping us kind of get the ball rolling with all the other parts of our schedule, the stuff we actually want out the door.
I strongly agree with that.
Crystal, I believe you actually have a couple of notes. Can you prompt us with one of the other topics? I wanted to make sure we didn't drop the ball on our last podcast. I want to make sure we carry things over, be a man of our word kind of thing.
The next topic is game development now and into the future.
Okay, yeah, actually that transitions nicely in my mind. I also just realized I forgot to start my timer, so now it's started.
We're about 15 in, so if
Got
you
it.
want to start it off with that.
Thank you. Yeah, so game development now and in the future. And I think this is a really good piggyback because we just mentioned what our release schedule is and where we're going next. And I already said that we're at that point where game development is basically ready to get started in earnest. We've decided on this game engine called Godot. It's a free and open source game engine. It just feels like a really good choice if we're going to be in indie game development. company, then why not choose a free and open source engine? Uh, there were two other major competitors. One is Unreal, and while Unreal is a phenomenal tool, you guys probably know it from Unreal Engine and like Fortnite's creator, Epic
Mm-hmm.
Games, right? They own Unreal. Phenomenal tool, really, really good for 3D and pretty darn good overall. It that and the other major competitor, whose name is skipping me right now, they just had a lot of drama. Uh, Unity, Unity Engine. Both of them fantastic tools. I have nothing negative to say about them. But as indie developers, I'm just conceptually against the idea of paying someone a percentage of our income if we succeed big time, right? So if we made $1 million in the future, first of all, awesome, like break a bottle of champagne. But then pay some company $50,000 because you made $1 million, right? So it's like, do you have 50,000 because you made $1 million? Yeah, but it's still $50,000 because you use their tool, and it just doesn't sit right with me. And we all discussed this a little bit in the past. How does that pertain to our schedule? Well, we talked about needing to learn, right? So I'm currently going through this Godot tutorial that's wonderful and fantastic. YouTube will be taking it down the road. But in the past, in one of our prior podcasts, we talked about needing to make sure we don't all try to do the same thing at the same time until we have that skill set, right? So where is our game development right now? And right now it's we're learning the tool and having someone become an expert, and then we're going to transition to sharing that skill set. But all three of us can still be involved, right? We still have, there's so much that goes into game development. So I'm going to need help from you guys way before you ever learn how to use the Godot code aspects of things, right? There's
Mm-hmm.
going to be digital assets, there's going to be story building, level construction, just it's mind boggling what goes into game development. Marketing is a huge, huge aspect that's going to make or break us. We could make the best game in the world, but if we can't market it, or no one's going to know it exists, right? So I think in terms of our schedule and where we are right now, we're not doing a lot of the development because we're making sure that we're setting up all the infrastructure that will support that development, because we're going to need support and we're going to need help. And the only way to do that is to make sure that our infrastructure is not only solid for us, but good enough to where people are going to want to help, or they're going to be able to help, right? So that's kind of where I see us right now. We're laying all the foundation down. Where do you guys see us in terms of release schedule with game development moving forward? We talked a little bit amongst ourselves with like a potential Patreon type subscription.
I honestly am a little confused by the question.
Okay, so let me restructure the question. How do you guys feel we might be able to make our progress on the game more something that people can consume in mass media, or how can people consume our game before it's actually 100% developed and polished, right? How do we build hype? How do we build interest? What can we show to perhaps potential supporters that will keep them invested?
I think I could take this one and run for a little bit if you want.
Yes, please.
So I think when it comes to what people can consume or be engaged in, I think starting to build a realm or a story for people to build interest in. So again, there's the cool part of looking at a game and putting it together and looking at the lighting and looking at the oohs and ahs of the visual. Because again, we're in the world of everything is visual. Everything's like what can I see? Otherwise, I don't believe it.
Right.
But I think what a lot of people have shown, if you look at games or just things in general that have very good stories, you can then turn them into something far bigger.
Yep.
Dune, the movie just came out recently, the second one. Everything in that is based on a series of books. And again, with Harry Potter, things like that, the story is what causes the build up. So I think if we can start to develop, or again, our world and our realm, things will start to build off of that. And that's what people can kind of see is as they start to see the story or tidbits of story,
Mm-hmm.
you can give examples of it. So we have this character, and this is what he does, and this is how he plays into our story. Or you can even have a beginning of a story, and then allow people to grow with the story.
Yeah.
And I think that'd be a great way to again build a community around it and build the support around it. As we say, does this work? Do people like this story aspect? And I think that's a cool, different approach to building a world. Is a lot of the times when people learn about something, it's so far down the road, it's either they like it or they don't.
Right.
Because it's already been established inside of a series of books or a brand new book or something like that, where they'll hear it from a friend saying, like, hey, I started this book about, again, I'm just using Harry Potter, and I liked it. Check it out.
Right.
Whereas if we could build a community around it, we can build our game to how we like it to be, but we could also take input from a community and say, like, did you guys like this? And it allows people to feel a little more hands on with the story. And I think that's a cool way to build it.
Yeah, totally agree. In fact, I think a good starting point for something like that would be starting with what are our core values. Crystal, you and I specifically had several discussions about, hey, if we're going to be making a game, what obviously no one knows what the game's going to be. It's you know, we're talking about making one, right?
Yeah.
But we did say, okay, well, what are some of these core values, at least between the three of us, that we think are really important? And we could tell our viewership basically, these are the things we think are really important in a game. What do you think, right? What do you agree, disagree? What would you like to see, regardless of whether you agree or disagree? Um, so, what was something that was really important to you that you think is going to be something we see down the road, especially when the game comes around? Yeah, the you that's right there.
Ah, goodness. Um, well, for me, something that was very important, and I kind of made a pretty big thing about it to you, was character customization. Um, because we had originally talked about just creating a character
Yeah.
and having that character be who you play. But I was like, wait, 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 wait. I like spending a couple hours at the beginning of the game. I know he likes spending a couple hours at the beginning of a game just going over, you know, how they could create their character, whether it's to look like me or, resemble somebody who I'd want to be in this fantasy world. That was something that was very, very important to me. Um, I was going to joke around and say romancing. I want to romance all the NPCs, please. Thank you.
And
No.
that's a big thing these days.
It is popular in its own arena for sure, but
I
I don't.
mean, look at Baldur's Gate.
Okay, it is very popular in many arenas. I just don't
Just
think
saying.
that that was one of the things that we saw as a core value,
No,
right?
no, no, no.
I do think it's neat in and of itself. So, on that topic, right? These ideas may evolve over time, but I think the taking our core values and sharing them with the world is one way for us to really focus our development cycles early on, because if we go, hey, we think having some sort of customization with your character is really important, and then we throw that idea out, especially if once we start getting some Patreons and they go, Yeah, I don't really care about that. I just need it to be very responsive and action packed. That would significantly change our course of action, right?
Heartbroken. Romance it is.
And I think the one I brought up, well, I brought up two really, but the one that I think is the top of those two is cooperative play.
Yeah.
To purposefully date myself, when I was growing up, cooperative play was something that you did or didn't buy a game because it didn't have co-op. If you couldn't couch co-op, let alone online co-op, uh, if you could not play cooperatively, there were many games people just outright didn't buy. And
Yeah,
I wouldn't buy
back
games
when
with. You can go ahead.
back when consoles used to come with two controllers for a reason.
yeah, out of the
Yeah.
box,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so this is like a stab at the current gaming industry, but also this is, if we're going to bring something to the table, I want to bring something that I know not only brought me joy, but I think legitimately added to the value of the entire industry when I was younger. And we still see really good, very popular cooperative games these days. It Takes Two, the even Baldur's Gate. We mentioned Baldur's Gate. That is an RPG. It's definitely geared and totally capable of being like a solo experience. But Crystal and I played cooperatively, couch co-op. Many people are playing online with their friends, going through the story together, and it's still a wonderful, awesome experience. And that's probably the most well-received game in the industry in the last several years. I I almost want to say hands down the most well-received game in the industry.
Yeah.
Larian Studios, good job. That was fantastic for many reasons, but the co-op was something that kind of went against the industry grain, the current industry grain. And so they did a fantastic job at doing that. Was it perfect when it came out? Not for all consoles. I remember the PlayStation struggled, really struggled. You changed an item in your inventory, and suddenly your couch co-op partner just staring at you like, "Why would you do this to us?" The game just slows to a crawl. But they patched it very soon after, and it became very responsive very quickly. So they did a fantastic job. Joe, you had, I think, a core concept early on, and it's a matter of, do you remember what we spoke about?
If you could refresh my mind, it'd probably help. But there's so many things with games that are, for me, it was lack of storyline.
Mm-hmm.
I think is a big thing with me personally that I can just bring back up again based on what I've said before. Because I remember playing games as a kid, and especially like you can mention when we were younger, we grew up playing. Here's the date: Super Nintendo, Sega, things like that. Where again, you didn't have. I think what kind of changed the industry was LAN connections and playing in
Yeah.
bigger parties and playing on massive scales. Because I remember the first time we got into a game, and you could play with up to 60 people on it, which I believe was like Battlefield, and it was just awe. Like you were like, holy crap,
Mm-hmm.
there's 60 people in here. And that was amazing because again, the most that you could play with prior to that is if you had a LAN set up and maybe 16 people. But again, that kind of got rid of the story of a game. It became more about the experience of a game or a part of a game
Yeah.
and not necessarily the whole game. I think a good example of that in a recent release was Call of Duty. The game itself, because people like the battle royale and just the general multiplayer, were okay. But when you looked at the story of it, it had one of the lowest rated stories in a long time, and it took like 5 seconds to beat it. And I think with a lot of games now, they throw the idea of what the story is
Mm-hmm.
out the window. It's more of like, what can we copy from what other games are doing just to get a game out?
Yeah.
And as a developer or like somebody who wants to start something, I think that it needs to get back to that. Because even if you looked at Halo, for example, Gears of War, which Epic started on,
Mm-hmm.
before Fortnite, which a lot of people don't know. Their big AAA game was Gears of War.
Yep.
And the stories in these games would literally grip you. And like you would watch the CGI and the like cinematographics and be like, even go back as far as the original Final Fantasy, because its story alone had just. And I remember watching Mav play it, and I would kind of help him with puzzles or things as he was playing it, but I didn't even physically have to play the game. It was just
Back,
watching and like, oh, what's happening now?
Yep.
And then, oh, this guy did this and that guy did that, and then, oh, Aerith, this is gonna happen, and we're sitting there watching this happen, going, "Oh,"
Yeah.
like it
7.
felt like we were watching a movie.
Yep.
yep,
And I think that needs to come back to gaming as a whole. And I think that'd be a breath of fresh air is to get games in general where you are invested in the story. And that'd be my hill to die
Yeah.
on. Is that I want you to say like this story and this what's the word? The lore. It gets so people get so into it. It's like, oh, I got this.
Yeah. Definitely, because I think what one way to phrase what you're saying is that there's such a heavy focus on the mechanics of games, but not the totality of a game. It would be like in any other industry that's remotely art, books, movies, TV shows, right? It is not enough to have really good action, right? Are there movies that are clearly just for the action? Yeah, absolutely. Lots of them. But they're not the ones that stand the test of time. They're not the ones that really get conversation going for a long period of time. You know, you don't look back and go, "Man, I really love The Matrix only because the action was good at that time." Right? No one says that. They say The Matrix was revolutionary for its time. The action was great for its time, don't get me wrong. But that's not why it became a classic. It became a classic because everything was there. And I think a really good shooter that kind of stresses the difference between the current first person shooters. I'll bet you're thinking the same one I am, Crystal. Titanfall 2?
yeah,
Yeah. Titanfall 2, phenomenal in every single way for its time and arguably still. The mechanics, fantastic. The controls, responsive. Story, outstanding. Graphics for its time, solid. Everything about it, amazing. There are so many other shooters that feel similar, maybe even look similar, but nothing ever comes close to how people look at Titanfall 2 because they don't have that fleshed out lore. They don't have that campaign mode, right? It was a
yeah.
complete
What was the
package.
game that came
Unfortunately.
out? The
Mhm.
I don't mean to cut you off, but it's like right here where it kind of looked like Titanfall, and it looked like it was going to be really really good. It was
Anthem, maybe?
yeah, where it just looked astounding.
Yes. Like
And
they're
then
flying through a cave or something for the demo.
oh, I was so hyped. It was like another Destiny for me, where it was like yes yes yes, this is it. And then you play it, and you're like, I'm bored. Like
Yeah. I don't even know what happened to that game. I just remember again working at GameStop and seeing it being traded in for like $2.
Yeah. In
So I don't know what happened to it though.
So I can't say what happened in terms of critics, but I had the exact same, but on my own experience
we
that Joe
played it
just
together.
described.
Like
I bought it, I played it, and then I just put it down. It was just like, cool.
you maybe
Not,
got like 15 hours into it if you're like lucky, and then it was like,
yep,
what am I going with?
yep. It was too reliant on its graphics, in my opinion. And the min, I, from what I remember, it's testing now. The mechanics were okay. So it had like 2/3 of the puzzle in place, but that wasn't enough, especially
Um,
because you played it as a single player experience. I think maybe it could have done okay if it was not meant for single player, but if you're going to have a single player experience, there better be a gripping story.
It was overall multiplayer, but again, the single playing by yourself, nothing.
Uh, See, I never even got it because the fact that it was multiplayer, one, I didn't remember. And two, it certainly wasn't a factor as to why I was excited about it. So, how does that affect us? Basically, I think that when we go down the road with our schedule, one of the things we're going to have to be really careful about is to not get into the large gaming industry habit of we've got these deadlines. And so we get hyper focused. We get hyper focused on the mechanics that we need in place by this week or this month, right? And it's going to be very easy to do. I know because I code for a living. It's so easy to lose sight of that big picture. And I think if we're going to talk about, our game development, where we're starting, where we want to be, we could get into, okay, every other week we want to release, sneak previews into our lore, sneak previews into our game assets and all this stuff, which we do want to do, right? But I think a more important topic is really covering down for future us when we go back to watch our terrible podcast that we started with. Oh, yeah, we wanted like these three big things. Are we still doing that?
And none of them are used.
Yeah, like character creator, you pre-select one person, male or female. There you go. Good to go. You just put in something better. You select your character, fully masked, can't see them at all, and you just select your age. Just...
You have three options: mage, wizard, or warlock. That's the same thing.
Exactly.
Oh my god.
Okay, archivist, you have the master list. What's our next ball to bat here?
I wrote down two things.
Mission
The
failed.
third
But
one
no,
was
I
more-
know the
the
third
third was
one I
more of a
believe
flip on the
was
coin.
discussing the games we played, right? Or no?
Yes. Yes,
Yep.
I believe so.
Yeah.
So, kind of following the theme of today, we're talking about our schedule and where it's at now, where we're going. So, part of where it's at and where we're going is our current dives, right? So, you two have recently been the most recent, at least, of the three of us to dive into games that we haven't released yet onto YouTube, which we will tomorrow morning. So let's talk a little bit about your experience with your most recent dive. I know Crystal's super excited about hers. She's passionate.
I'll lead on the
I'm
positive
ready.
note if you'd like.
She's ready.
You could start.
No,
You
what?
could start.
No, you can go.
You're
You
right
can go.
there.
Go for it.
So I have dived into Helldivers 2. And it started off okay. The first night I played it with Maverick, and um
We died.
we died a lot.
Totally unbalanced.
Now there's one thing I will say about this game. So I don't have the most positive experience with this game. It doesn't really tell you what to do. It just kind of expects you. I think it's very much one of those games like you had to play the first one to kind of know what's going on in the second one, which is fine, but I didn't know that. So Maverick and I go into a mission where we have to defend people. You know you have to defend people.
Always the best type of mission in a game.
Yeah, that's all you know. First of all, we didn't know what mission to pick. We didn't know anything. It was just, let's pick a random mission. Let's go. So we go into this defend mission on the easiest mode. It's not easy. It's the easier mode than easy. And we lose people because, we can't defend them. And we full wiped dead.
Not once. Not twice.
You have to die like 4 or 5 times in order to completely wipe. So come to find out later on, which we didn't know in the first day we played together because it didn't force us to get online.
Yeah.
It was just he and I trying to play together. We couldn't figure out how to play with other people. Well, come to find out, I didn't have the online play. I do now. So I got that taken care of. But you basically need 4 people in order to beat that mission. So you're not playing this game by yourself. I mean, you can,
Or
so
with a
long as
partner.
those 4 other people get in there. So I didn't. I don't like that all that much.
Yeah, we spoke about co-op and how it's like a key part of what we want, but not forced co-op, right?
Yeah.
So there were 2 of us. We still multiple times. We didn't just die multiple times in the mission. That particular mission type, we could
We
not
couldn't.
clear. We tried multiple. I think we spent an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And on different maps of the same mission type, and you just couldn't clear it. Now, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm sure people will hear this and think, well, you're just scrubs, right? But we're not novice gamers.
In their defense, for Helldivers specifically, we are casual gamers. So we are scrubs.
We're not
But
scrubs.
if I were any other person like that, I mean, me, right? I was frustrated. I think I ended up getting off the game after we lost so many times because, I mean, what's the point? And then you try to get back in the game. The screen would be black. You would not be able to get in because the screen would just be black. Or you were like number 3,562 in a queue because their servers were so packed that they were limiting how many people can get on the game, which is fine. Okay, let's be real. I play Final Fantasy 14. That's normal. I'm okay with a queue. But I mean, I think, how long were we in the queue?
I never got back in for the second, third. I didn't get back in for a week.
Yeah, because they didn't fix it to where people were staying logged in and making it to where nobody else could log into the game. So here we are trying to play.
Well,
Sorry.
no, you disconnected your mic. You're on your laptop or something
Hold
now.
on.
This will be a
Is it
Twitch
coming
clip.
in okay?
Bloopers for the Patreons.
Wait, hold on. I can't hear you.
No, we can hear you, but it sounds like it's coming from a different mic.
Okay. Does it sound better now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stop talking.
Just talk less with your hands.
I don't even remember what I was saying now.
That we couldn't get back in for a long time. People were staying logged in. And so
right. So the game had to actually start booting people out of the game in order to make it to where people could get back in. And now you could get in the game, no problem. It's a non-issue. I don't know. The game to me, I'm struggling with it. I'm struggling with it so hard, and I'm trying to find what everybody likes about it because I am a first-person shooter lover, and I haven't just played. I play Apex Legends a lot, but I also played games like Halo back in the day. I've played things like Borderlands. I've played Call of Duty, the story, Titanfall 2. I've played different games. Zombies. But Helldivers 2 to me just feels clunky. Like you're a heavy person walking around trying to get away from these robots or bugs that are trying to kill you, and they're killing you. Okay? Because I suck. As a casual gamer, it is nice that you could just queue into a match, go in, do the thing, and then be done. Yeah. That's nice. The missions are very short. But it's also not nice because, like, what do I do? What am I supposed What am I supposed to do? You know?
Well,
So,
that
I don't know.
review should be interesting when it releases then. Is this for casual gamers? Sneak preview. Probably yes, if you enjoy playing with your friends. If you enjoy solo, go play Dark Souls instead.
God,
uh, do
no.
not let me do anything with those types of games.
Yeah.
Just don't.
Yeah.
You will get the worst experience. Mm-mm.
I think my biggest issue with games like the Souls games, even Monster Hunter falls into this category for me. Is it's not so much the difficulty, but the difficulty due to the controls. Like they
Yeah.
purposefully introduce massive animation locks. They purposefully introduce super slow, not only controls but the weapons themselves are very slow. And so when we make a game, the controls will be very responsive. So help me, I will lose my mind.
Make them smooth.
Yeah, like when I press dodge, I want to dodge now.
Yes.
Oh, I'll have an aneurysm.
Now.
We're going to spend like a month and a half to 2 months just figuring out how to dodge smoothly.
Oh yeah.
We'll
Like,
find those
but they're
commands.
animation locked. I don't care. Break the game as long as when we press dodge, we dodge. Like it is one of
Yes.
my biggest pet peeves in any game is that if you give us a dodge mechanic, it better work when I press the button. Period.
That's why I
Yeah.
can't play those games.
Yes.
If you want to see what games piss me off, and I'm telling you, like, I have not bought another game like that since,
Mm,
you can ask my wife. I cannot play those games.
it's
She
so
just looked
funny.
at my face, and I was like, I
Mm-mm.
tried it for maybe 2 days. No, no.
What's great about it is that everyone has friends that are like, "You're gonna love this game." Oh, what's so great about it? It's made by the same people that make Dark Souls. Stop talking.
No.
Like I just don't
I'm good.
I don't care. And I think
That
we're
was
giving
what? Elden Ring?
Elden Ring is a yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of
Super
people tried to get us to play Elden Ring, and we were just like,
phenomenally rated
no.
game. I
like
just can't.
maybe I would have even enjoyed it if they just didn't tell me it was made by the same like to be the same type of aesthetic. I might have loved it. But as soon as they mention it, I'm just like, okay, you had to ruin it. It'd be like, hey, try this. It tastes like onions and garlic, or whatever, something people don't like. I was going to use other words, but I'm trying my best. Right? Something that people
Onions and
generally
garlic.
don't like.
Yum.
All right, whatever. Analogy lost, but the idea is there. Uh,
Soap.
soap. There you go. Soap. Most people don't consume soap. That's a good one. Joe, you're diving in, or you dove into a game recently that you had almost the opposite experience with, much more pleasant.
It was probably completely opposite and completely random. So I play primarily on the Xbox. So I have the Xbox Pass, so I get a certain amount of games free. And I had probably like over a year ago put a game in like to play later, and I completely forgot about it. And I'm not gonna hide that. That to the point where it's coming off of their catalog relatively soon. So they're like, "Oh, this game's coming off. Would you still like to play it?" So when we started doing the reviews and things like that, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna give this just a shot because there was something about it that caught my attention. I think it's the look of it kind of gave me nostalgia just looking at it. Like I was like, that reminds me of being a kid. Again, bringing up Sega and Super Nintendo, playing like Mario, things like that.
Yeah.
So installed it. It installed pretty quick, so I was like, okay, this game's not gonna be that. I was like, this will probably be like a week, and then I'm done with it. I'm still playing the game now. That's how much I enjoy it. I think it broke a lot of things for me in the sense of like I'm not the biggest fan of turn style RPGs. Like they frustrate me to a bit. Like that's why when I brought up Final Fantasy earlier, I liked the story and I was like interested in it, and I would give like something that I would notice on the screen because I'm pretty good at the puzzles of it. But again, I never really got too into those types of games. And this one, I can say like it started slow, and I was kind of like, oh, it's another one of these. And then it started to pick up. And then what's different is compared to a lot of games now
Sorry to
is
interrupt, but
there's
which game is this?
Sea of Stars. Sorry.
Gotcha.
Um, Again, it was made by I'll tell you right now, Sabotage Studios, and it was released last year in 2023. It's actually a prequel to another game that they made, which I never played.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So again, it's turnstile based puzzle game, things like that. And the puzzles in it, honestly, like I can count, and I'm probably 30 hours into this game. There's only been two puzzles where I was like, I'm stuck. Like I can't figure this out. Like I can't visually see where the way out is. So I had to like Google something and be like, how do I get out of this? But the story, considering that they don't have voice actors, because I don't know many people these days that will actually sit and read those little pop ups as a character, and there's no voice whatsoever. It just makes like a little noise, like like it reminded me of like Mega Man back in the day, where like
Yeah.
there's no voice. It's just a story box. So most of the time you're just like skip, 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 skip. Like, and again, I probably did that for the first couple of minutes of it because I was like, there's nothing like whatever. And then I started like, actually like reading it as I was playing it because it was quick enough and it wasn't like a huge paragraph on the screen. It was just a couple lines, and then the next person would talk, and then you get right back into the action. The the gameplay was actually challenging enough to where I was intrigued in it, and I wanted to get better at it and figure out the mechanics of it. Because a lot of the times with me personally, when it comes to RPGs, is that it gets so overly complex that I just kind of like lose it. There's people that are like they study the builds and they say, oh, you got to do this for DPS and then that for a tank. And you can ask my brother when I've played Final Fantasy and other things. I'm like, who should I be, and what can I do to cause the most damage? And that's my extent of diving into like a full on RPG. Because again, I'm an action gamer. I played action sports. Like I need something to be happening. Otherwise, I'm like, is this ring gonna do anything for me? Like that's how I am. Like I don't. But in this game, it was actually like intriguing enough to where I wanted to go look for it. I could figure out the puzzles, and I wanted to go find the hidden areas on them. Purposely look for like little corners and be like, "There's something there." And I would purposely like walk over and like click the button to see if like the action sign would come up.
Yep.
So again, I was beyond surprised by this game. Again, it was a random, just like let me hop in and see what it is. To the point where again I'm 30 hours into it and I want to finish this game just because I like the story so much. And this game is not what you would consider like a current gen type game if you looked at it, because it looks like an old Super Nintendo or Sega game. The graphics aren't like they're very clean for this, obviously for
Right.
this.
So it has the resolution. It's
Yeah,
just
it's got
stylistically.
like current day resolution and just overall smoothness where you can kind of go between things. But the look of it is an old school game. And again, for me being an older gamer, it was just like, oh, this is fun. Like this is a good change of pace compared to like again playing Apex or something like that, where after
Right.
about an hour and a half, you're like that vein in the middle of your forehead just like, and
Yeah.
you don't want to like yell at people. But again, it's a very relaxing game. The story's fun. Visually, it's actually very nice. And I think it's my review is probably going to be one of the most positive that I've had recently because overall it's a great experience.
Yep.
Be nice.
It's worth playing. Like it, and I told him have that. I'm like, hey, this game's actually worth playing
I
if you get time.
I've played the demo for it and I was thoroughly impressed with it. I basically everything you've said, I kind of felt the same way. I was equally taken aback when it had no dialogue, no vocal dialogue, but the snippets that they do give you were short enough and, it was very all right, just enough. Let's get rolling. They do a wonderful job. Speaking of strategy RPGs, I will most likely be diving into one that I have pulled up. on my other screen here. It's made by Vanillaware, which I actually didn't know Vanillaware made this. Vanillaware is a game company that I've accidentally followed in the past because I played some of their other games like Grim Grimoire, Odin Sphere, Dragon's Crown, and they kind of all have a similar vibe to them if anyone ever sees that. But it's called Unicorn Strategy, and it's going to be out on several platforms, but I will most likely be playing it on the PS5 just because I love playing with a controller, and the PlayStation controller, I actually like the PS4 the best, but the PlayStation controllers are really good for my hands, and I'm looking very forward to this Unicorn Overlord, and I actually think it came out yesterday. I gotta double check the date, but it's coming out either yesterday or today, and I'm really excited about it. It's also another RPG, and I played the demo similarly. I had pretty positive impressions, so we'll see how it goes come full dive time. I can't think of what I specifically think we want to cover for next podcast, so I think let's just leave it open-ended, and we'll go from there. Crystal, as promised, you've got our outro covered. Sometime
She's
today.
laughing for those that because you're listening, you can't see it, but she's laughing.
So, thank you for joining us. This has been Gaming at the...
Do it again. Do it again.
This reminds me of when we were going to land the airplane.
Yeah.
And
the first time
I
you
had
spoke
to
to the tower.
Yeah, I had to do the
My
tower
first experience
call.
was bad. Mine was bad.
I just started busting out laughing.
Into the
while
live
making-
tower.
Into like my finger was still on the button because you had to push the button, and I couldn't let it go, and I was laughing. It was bad. Anyways, see, I wrote an intro, but I didn't write an outro.
So, pro tip: the outro is the same as the intro. Just don't say "welcome back." Say
Welcome back to the end of another episode.
Should just do that as a thing.
The fact that you made it this far, we commend you for your service. Please continue.
This has been Gaming at the Round Table, episode 4 with JoJo, Maverick, and Crystal. That's the intro. That's not gonna work.
Oh,
I'm
nice
gonna
media.
clip this out,
I just
by the
smacked
way.
my microphone so hard. Ouch.
Yeah,
All
I'm
right.
clipping this out. So
No, you're not.
yes, I am.
See you, everybody. Thanks again.
Okay, it works.